Gemara. Today's daf, the Monday, the third day of Chalamoid, is daf Kuf Yud. Where are we? Kuf Yud Ches. And just to recap what we're doing so far, we're discussing how the Yidden inherited the land in Eretz Yisrael. And we had three opinions. One opinion is that it went according to the people who left Mitzrayim, according to their families, and we darshan that from the pasuk Lishmois Matas Avaisam, goes back to the ancestors. So, for example, if one person left Mitzrayim with 10 children, and one person left Mitzrayim with one, then when they came into Eretz Yisrael, it doesn't matter that the family of 11 now is reduced to 2 because most of them died in the Midbar. They still get the 11 portions, and they just divide amongst the 2. And the other family might have now 11 children. Initially, there were only 2. They divide their 2 small portions amongst 11. Because you go back to the way it was when they left Mitzrayim. The other, that was Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua says it goes according to Leboiha Oretz. We don't care how many left Mitzrayim. It's when you came into the land, as long as you were 20 years old, you were counted. That's the amount of land you got. So if your family had 5, you get 5 portions. 2, you get 2 portions. So why does the Torah say Lishmois Matzas Avosim? So here we say Mishuna. This kind of inheritance is unique, and that is that the Mesim, that the Chayim give to the Mesim. What does that mean? It means as follows: that you have 5 members of one family, cousins, that come into Yisrael, and from the other line, from the uncle, say the other one that has only one son. So between the 2, they have 6 lots of land. But it doesn't work that way. Then those 6 lots go back to the previous generation, to their fathers, to the 2 brothers. They pool it together. So between the 2 brothers now they have 6 lots of land, and then they bequeath it back to their children. So the one that has 5 children has only half of the 6, 3. He gives 3 lots to 5 children, and the other one has 3 lots to give to 1 child. Now, why that should be so? We said the Rivos said that's Xeris HaKasav. And the other answers in the Rishonim, but Rashi says a Chumash actually is talking about it went back to the grandfather, not to the uncles, because why in the world should the brothers share? Even though the example the Gemara gave was about 2 brothers, but it really means that it goes back to the grandfather. So there's one grandfather, so whatever the grandchildren inherited goes back to the grandfather who left Mitzrayim over the age of 20, puts it all together, and then passes it back on. So, for example, there's like one grandfather who came into the Midbar, had 2 sons. One son had 20 children, and one son had 1 child. Between the 2 of them now, they have 21 lots of land. That goes right back to the grandfather. The grandfather now has 21 lots of land, and he gives half to one son. I think about it. He gives half to one son, and he gives half to the other son. The one son that has 1 child, he's going to get half of 21 lots of land, 11, 10 and a half. The other one passes also the 10 and a half, but to his 20 children. So that's what it is. This is the second opinion. The first opinion holds. The first opinion says we only look at those people came into the left Mitzrayim, the Yitzim Mitzrayim, and that's it. So I don't care when you get into Israel how many kids you have or don't have a kid. Whatever the parents Yashin they inherit at the time, that's what they pass on to their children, like normal Yerusha. And it doesn't matter how many kids you have. Like Yerusha, you divide amongst others. The other one says, no, you look at the Boy Haaretz, how many members of that family actually entered Yisrael? The ones they did, they put it back to their grandfather. And then you read, the grandfather had 5 children, and there's each child. No, they get whatever their father inherits, they divide that amongst 20. So it depends on that. The third opinion of Shimon Elazar says, no going back, no cross. If you left Mitzrayim, you get a portion of Yisrael. If you came to Yisrael, you get a portion of Yisrael. So people end up with 2 portions. For example, if I was over 20 when I went to Yisrael, and my grandfather was over 20, or my father over 20 when I went to Ridbar, I'll get my portion. But I'm always get his portion. I'll get 2. There's another way of looking. Some people wanted to say that one person can get 2 portions. If it was over 20 when he went into the Midbar and he continued, he survived the Midbar and he came into Yisrael and he got again another portion. Some Rishonim say it's impossible. How is that even possible? Because everybody over 20 died in the Midbar. Other Rishonim, and it says Mephiles are the only people who survived Yeshua and Kalev. And others say that's talking about only from the age of 20 or 60. But if he was over 60, we went to the Midbar, then, and now he's over 100, he went to Yisrael. Others say that can't be because the people Yashin were between 20 and 60. Only those who counted between 20 and 60. Anyway, okay. So then
Can I ask? So, what did the girl do in all of this?
We'll learn about that later in the Gemara because the girl is difficult to understand what exactly the point of the girl was when everything was allotted anyway. But we'll see later.
Okay.
Interesting that the Gemara goes in such detail as to what happened then, because like Rashi sometimes in Chulin will have in other places, Haba. Why do we need to know exactly how they divide Eretz Yisrael? The truth of the matter is, I looked everywhere to see if anyone discusses. I don't know. There's enough communal halacha at all from all of this. I don't know. I don't know. Because really, we're spending pages on this, and like Maida Hava. And we had the Gemara, that Gemara asked that question a few times as well. He said, Hilchos or Mashiach. So Rashi sometimes says, Droish v'kabelcha, lahagdol Torah v'yadis. Sometimes just to learn, for the sake of learning. Or sometimes the other Rishonim, they don't like Rashi's Pshat and Chulin, and they say, no such thing. Everything has to have enough communal halacha. And the Rosh over there finds enough communal halacha. It has to relate somehow to halacha. Not sure yet how all of this Gemara relates to halacha. Anyway, apart from the daughters of Shlavcha who complained, also generally the tribe of Menashe. It's interesting. The daughters of Shlavcha came from Menashe. It was the tribe of Menashe, so they were the biggest Oive Yisrael, Menashe, and yet half of the Shevet ended up on the wrong side of Eretz Yisrael, which is so difficult to understand. They were not from the ones who came to complain to Moshe Rabbeinu, but once Moshe Rabbeinu gave it, suddenly Menashe came on the scene, and they got half the Shevet Menashe, and you have to work out how is it that Menashe was more, connected to Yisrael than any other tribe, because they constantly complained. They want to make sure they have Ched Yisrael, and they gave half of it up. I don't know. It's a bit it needs an explanation. I'm sure you'll find something in Mitzvah Hashem. If you find something, before the appreciate how it all fits. Okay. Then Abai came along and said, it's obvious that there was every single Jew got a chelik at Yisrael because we don't find anyone else complaining apart from Menashe and Bnei Shlavcha. I'll to argue that that the reason why they didn't complain because they did complain, just it wasn't recorded. And we see that by Menashe, and the only ones that were so that's not a proof because maybe the only ones that were recorded were ones that were effective. By Menashe, the Gemara says, no, Menashe's complaint was not effective, and yet it's recorded. What do you mean wasn't effective? He told him go into the forest. So you thought the pshat is when he told him go into the forest means clear more area, and you'll have more. Menashe complained that their tribe is now the biggest. When they started out from Mitzrayim, they were a small tribe. So, okay. But now we're so big, and you're giving us such a small piece of land. So we asked the question, look at who cares? Every person got a chelik in Yisrael. It doesn't matter, what it was, what you left Mitzrayim, if you go according to Boya Eretz. So he answered that no, the problem was that most of the tribe were very young. They were under 20 years old. And if you're under 20 years old, you don't yashin. So the Gemara now says, no, Menashe was not effective with their complaints. You cannot give them more land because giving them more land means you're taking away from another tribe. You can't take away from another tribe, another Shevet, in order to, to pacify them with everything else. So what was his eitzah? So the Gemara says he wasn't offering them more land. In fact, they weren't effective, yet they complained. And the fact that no one else is recorded to complain means nobody else complained. Everybody received a tract of land. So what exactly did Yeshua advise them? About 5 lines. The Gemara's question was, okay, 6 lines about him. But Yosef, they screamed. It didn't help because Vinukra was written down. There's a raya that there was nobody else who screamed. Gemara said no raya. Maybe there were other people also who complained. Maybe. Sahakar's not recorded. And Bnei Mash is recorded. Hasam Eitza Teva Kamashmalan. Yeshua was not giving them more land. Their complaint also was not effective. So what was Yeshua telling them? Not telling them clear the forest and expand your land. No. He said go to the forest. You know what he told them? The idea of Ayin Hara. If you have a very big family and people see, people will give you an Ayin Hara. So hide. Don't be ostentatious. Don't be in people's face. Be, hide. You got to be careful from Ayin Hara. Some people wear red band. And the Klayaka says there to last time in Pasha Dvarim, learn how to be discreet. If you're successful in Parnasa, learn how to be discreet. You don't have to, gouge people's eyes and everyone should see how successful you are. That's what he says there. Yeah. Here he's saying other Yidden will be here. We'll give it Ein Hara. Because what happens is they'll say, "Why does he deserve more than I do? I'm much more pious than he is." And you're inviting the Abishter to have a look, Taka. Why Taka is this person getting all of these benefits and others are not? They say, "But you deserve it. Don't don't call unwarranted attention." Behind the comment, this is what Yeshua said. If you taka are a large nation, how you are to go into the forest. Why? Not to expand the land, but be discreet. I don't want to see how many kids you have. What he's telling them was, go hide in the forest. Interesting to that extent. So they said back to him, Anan Mizara de Yosef, we're Yosef's descendants, L'sholtu Bein Abisha. There's no Ein Hara by Yosef. Because it says in Pasuk, Bein Poiras Yosef, Yosef the charming son, Bein Poiras Aliyoyin. But he's so charming above everybody's eye. In other words, eyes, a bad eye cannot affect. As the phrase of the eye is the window of the soul, and the window of the soul is a person's soul, in the Kabbalah form, that your eye is a continuation of your soul, and your neshama is able to affect other people, and therefore, if you have an ayin horas, the ayin, it could affect others. Yeshiv and Amazar, the Yeshiv doesn't affect us. Rabbi Babu said, "Al tikra ale oyin ala oyle ayin," above the eye. And Yeshiv in Amam Hachim here, Yidgul aroi bekerav haaretz. Part of the bracha Yaakov said is that you should multiply bekerav haaretz. What's for Yidgul? For like fish. Ma dogin should be yam, mayim chasim alein. Water covers it. Ain't no ayin shel nobody can see it. Azar Yeshiv ayin shel let's. So they said to Yeshua, your advice doesn't help us, and you're not helping with the land either. That could be. That's why they ended up taking half of Avra Yarden, because Pasha, the land itself couldn't contain all of it. And maybe that's the end of it. That's the reason why. They had no breda. Meraglim Yeshua. Okay, it says in the Brayso, we'll continue to explain the Brayso. It says in the Brayso that the Meraglim, they received a portion of land, but it didn't pass on to their own family. Yeshua Kalev not to Chelkom. Yeshua Kalev took their portion. How do we know that? They outlived these people. What do you mean choyu? We have another pasuk. It says, nobody was left behind. They survived. Only Kalev and Yeshua. That they took over their chelik in Yisrael. So they yarshin the chelik of the meraglim in Yisrael. However, the misloinim, and we talked about it yesterday. First of all, who are the misloinim? The complainers. In the Torah, we have a few times they had misloinim. They complained against Moshe Rabbeinu, and sometimes it sounded like Klal Yisrael and Adas Kodesh. And right now, Adas Kodesh, we would think it means everybody. The entourage of Kodesh, his immediate family, and the Rosh Hashanah and all that. They were erased when they were swallowed in the earth. They didn't exist, so they're not sure that a chelik and given over to somebody else. They didn't exist, as if they never happened. So that's what the idea of swallowing in the earth was, as if they were never above the earth. Says the Gemara, but Tanya, didn't we learn meraglim misloinim v'adas kodesh? It says the meraglim, the misloinim, and adas kodesh. Yeshua were called not to chelkom. You just said that the misloinim and adas kodesh have no chelik. It says in another brayso that Yeshua and Kalev took their chelik as well. Like Kash, it's a machlekes. But what's the argument? Mar makish misleinim meraglim. One decides to equate the misleinim to the spies, and what do you mean? We'll see in a minute. And Mar loy makish misleinim. What do you call it? Meraglim. One decided that misleinim are just like the spies that what? That they lost. The chelik went over to Yeshua and Kalev, and the other one says no. That what do you call it? The Misleinim was separate from the spies. What's going on? So the Gemara says, you want to explain. The one who said the Misleinim had the same outcome as the Meraglim, that it ends up with Yeshua and Kalev. Does that mean that since the majority of the Eden were complainers, did I skip? Oh, sorry, you're right. I skipped a whole bunch. Tanya, okay, sorry. What's the argument here if you equate the Misleinim to Meraglim? You learned Avinu Meis Bamidbar. The Bnei Shlocha came along to say that our father earned land in Eretz Yisrael, and how did they say that? But our father died in the Midbar. Well, why did the father die in the Midbar? Maybe the father died in the Midbar and lost his rights to Eretz Yisrael. Which people who died in the Midbar lost their rights to Eretz Yisrael? Either the Meraglim or the Misainim or the Mislainim. So Avinu made the Midbar that Slavchut. So first of all, he was not part of the Eder. Where do you find the expression Eder? Which story was that? That's Meraglim. Hanoidim Hashem, who complained against, who went against the Eberster. It's called Eder Hador Hazai. Our father was not part of that group. So therefore, he has a chelik in Eretz Yisrael that should pass on to his children. And then, sorry, that's Meraglim. And then Hanoidim al Hashem, those who counted Hashem, which group is that? Elu Mislainim. Those are the Mislainim. And so this is what Bnei Shlocha is saying. So that first they mention Meraglim, then they mention Hanoidim Hashem, a Mislainim. Who are these Mislainim? And by Das Kodesh, Kimashmoi is Das Kodesh. So Makish Mislainim Meraglim. The first one said that the Mislainim are like the Meraglim, just like the Meraglim had a chelik in Eretz Yisrael, just as they didn't go to their children, so to the Mislainim. Just because they're in the same passage doesn't mean you have the same outcome. The Meraglim had land, but they did not go to their children, went to Shul Kolot. The Mislainim forfeited all their land. So I understand. Who are these Mislainim? Right now we think it's all the Yidden who complained against Moshe Rabbeinu. There's no water. Who complained to Moshe Rabbeinu by Mislainim? Klal Yisrael. The Makish Mislainim Meraglim. So where did if you hold that Mislainim like Meraglim, what happened to all their land? They went to Kol Yeshua. I mean, basically, Kol Yeshua owned the whole Eretz Yisrael. They basically owned the entire Eretz Yisrael because all the Yidden were Mislainim and Lecheda and all what Yeshua called the one holds that he compared them to Adas Meraglim, to the Eidah Meraglim. Amalei Mislainim Shabadas Kodesh Kamrim. We're talking about Adas Kodesh. Because Adas Kodesh is Mislainim. Adas Kodesh was the immediate family, and Mislainim were the 250 people. That is what the Machlekes is. So Yeshua called either got the 250 people's chelik or he didn't get the chelik. But it's not the whole Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so Papa, remember this whole Gemara started. Papa is asking a whole bunch of questions to Abaye based on the three opinions we learned. Mainly on the two opinions. So the Yesha he's all Papa Abaye. The one who says that it goes that it what? It was divided according to those who left Mitzrayim and then they just passed it on to their children. This is what it says in the pasuk. When we talk about tracts of land, it's using the expression chavle, which is ropes. Because how do they survey land and how do they measure? How do they cordon off each property from the next? They use a rope. So it's called in Tanakh chavle. Okay, so vayiplu chavle menashe. It says there, it's asar. There were 10 pieces. How are the 10 pieces? Shisa, the Shisi Bati others, there in Tanakh, it mentions 6 different families, so that's six pieces. And then we also add the 4 B'nai Slavchot. Even though we would break one family down, that's B'nai Slavchot. The Arba Didhu, and the 4 are B'nai Slavchot, and therefore Ha'asada is 10. And the 4 B'nai Slavchot is their father. Slavchot has his own, because Yitzim Mitzrayim. Remember, Yitzim Mitzrayim gets land. So Slavchot got land because he left Mitzrayim over 20. His father Chefer left Mitzrayim over 20, and even though he had brothers, but he gets a chelik in that. So he gets a chelik in that. Plus, Slavchot was a b'choyer, so he gets another portion of his father. So that's 3 chalakim already. That really Slavchot was entitled to. Plus, there was one uncle or one brother of Slavchot who didn't have any children. So the brothers got a chelik of that one brother, including Slavchot. So they got 4 portions. So 6 for the Bati of it, for different families, and 4 b'nai Slavchot. That's only if you hold that those who left Mitzrayim, each one receives a chelik. Ha'asad is 10. A man, the one who says he goes according to those that came into Eretz Yisrael. That you don't have 10 anymore. It's only 8. The Havishisa, the Shisi above the others. There are 6 of Bati others. And today did who? Which 2? L'chayda Slavcha didn't make it into Eretz Yisrael. So which 2? Which 2 is the other brothers who came into Eretz Yisrael, had children came into Eretz Yisrael. And remember we said before, what happens is that each child, or how many grandchildren they had, gets land, and then it goes back to the Zayda. So then it goes back to Chefer. And then Chefer then passes down to all of his children. So now Shlavchad will get, not He didn't make it that role, but he'll get because he's a Yodish bekever of his father, and he's a b'chayr. So Bnei Shlocha get two portions, but what the other cousins brought back to the Zayda goes down through their father Shlocha as a single portion and the b'chayr. So it's a total 8. It's not 10. Hatamnaya. Says the Gemara. Well, you're very happy with 10, but if you really think about it, it's only 9. They get Slavchat's chelik, which is 1, and then they get Chayfa's chelik. Right? If you go to Yitzim Mitzrayim, they got Slavchat's chelik, they get Chayfa and the double portion. That's only 9. Where do you get 10? Because he said there's an uncle who didn't have any children. So I'll say the 2 uncles didn't have any children. What's the problem? Had one uncle who didn't have any children, so then Slavcha got a share in that. I say the 2 uncles. That's a big issue. The Tanya that we learned, how do we know all this? It says in Pasuk, Nosin, that the Abisha told Moshe Rabbeinu. Yes, they're correct. Nosin titin lehem. Let's give them, and it says double stop. Nosin titin. Right? And it says they will give them a nachla amongst Achei Avim, amongst the brothers, which is their father's chelik. And then they have Havarta, the nachla of the father to them. So we learn in each one another chelik. Nosin titin lehem to nachla savim. That's not give them the portion of Slavchat's portion. And also what Slavcha gets amongst his brothers, what's that? What they yasha from their father. So nachlas avi. That's the Zayda. Havartes nachlas aviyan and give them now another nachla. What's the other nachla? The father was a b'chayr. They get that as well. Do chelik b'chayr. They get the chelik b'chayr. And the 10th one was an uncle, and the other one has the 2 uncles. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov says, "Af chelik acheavim not." So Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov says that what? That no, there was an uncle as well. Shnema says no saint titin. Says the Gemara man the ones that there were 2 uncles. It says how does he know? Or who? One answers, where do you get the extra uncle from? Ma'achuzas nachla nafka. It says the pasuk nosa titulhem achuzas nachla. Could have just said nachla. Nosa titulhem nachla. What's achuzas? An extra word. To tell you there's another achuza, another what? An uncle. So in addition to what Rabbi Yaakov says, it says nosa titulhem double. Why double? Because there was one uncle also that died without any children that they got. The other opinion says it says also achuza, another uncle that didn't have any descendants that came down. Okay, the Gemara continues. Well, that papa Papa has another question about Kra Michael Choshiv. What's the pasuk including over here? If we're counting those, it says the Chavle of Menashe were 10. There were a total of 10, right? 6 Batei others, and then 4 we broke down was Bnei Shlocha, that family itself. What are we counting here? Are we including the tops, all those under 20 years old? Then is Tuva Haviv. There were so many. If we're counting Batei others Kachashiv, then Shisa Haviv, there's only 6. There was only 6 Batei others. One of them was Chayfa. Why do we then break down Chayfa's family and we don't break down any other families? So what's going on here? Are we counting the young like Bnei Shlocha? There's a lot more than 6 Batei others. If you count one family of Chayfa as 4, break down with other Batei others into whatever it is. If you're only counting the heads of the families, the Batei others, then why is Bnei Shlocha being counted? You're saying 10. There's only 6 families in Menashe. So the Gemara, really, we're only counting Batei others, and we are not counting the youngsters. But there was a reason why we counted Bnei Shlocha, because it taught us halachas. It's not just telling you a historical fact. We learn halachas from here. Why? We learn from here, for example, the Kamash Malon. First of all, the Bnei Shlocha notul cheli b'chayra. We know that a b'chayra generally does not yarshin ro kibemuchzik. We know that a b'chayr only gets a double portion in what the assets the father has realized, not the father still has yet to realize it. Somebody owes money to the father, the b'chayr will not get a double portion if when the father passes away, the money wasn't paid up yet. So we would have thought that when it comes to Eretz Yisrael, the Bnei Shlocha would not have received because their father, the Yitzim Mitzrayim, it was 40 years away from Eretz Yisrael. The father died in the Midbar, right in the beginning, again. There was no, the father didn't get conquer Yashin land. When did they Yashin land? When they went into Eretz Yisrael. No, so it was only Row at the time. So the father does not get a double portion in Row, and neither do they. That's what we would have thought. And now the pasuk teaches you, no, they got an extra portion as a b'chayr. Why? Alma Eretz Yisrael muchzek is it teach you the moment the Eibushter promised to the Yidden or Yitzim Mitzrayim that they're getting Eretz Yisrael, they got it already. Ain't koyach chasa poil. The Eibushter, as if they got it already, it's no longer considered row, it's considered muchzek. Amar will continue. V'habonim, it says v'habonim notlu b'schus avi avim. The children of the Meraglim, they didn't yashin from the Meraglim. It went to Yeshua and Kalev, but they did yashin from their grandfather. Even though if the grandfather left the Yerusha, it would go first to their sons, which would be the Meraglim. So you would have thought, well, if the Meraglim received extra land because not their own, but because of their father, it should also go to Yeshua and Kalev. Says no, that only what did they lose? Their own rights. But those rights that they had because they yashin from their father or Zayda, that did go straight down to the grandchildren. That the children, they did take from their grandfather, and they took also from their mother's fathers. If the mother didn't have any brothers, who yashins the mother? And then it passes down to them. Says the Gemara, and the Meraglim didn't lose it to give it to Yeshua and Kalev. Says the Gemara, we learned b'schus atzman. We learned only that those who went to Yisrael from the Meraglim descendants only got the land that they deserved. Like kasha, it's not a problem. If you hold that the only people who got a chayah Yisrael is went into Yisrael, then of course the children of Meraglim didn't lose, had nothing to do with the Meraglim, because it's irrelevant. They got the portions that only when come to Yisrael, and that's what they got. And the Meraglim actually didn't lose anything because they never had a chelik in Yisrael, because they never entered Yisrael. But if you hold like it goes according to Yitzim Mitzrayim, then the Meraglim would have had a portion. The Meraglim forfeited their portion and went to Yeshua and Kalev, but the Zaydis went down to the grandchildren. The Brais that says that the children of the Meraglim receive land and soil on their own rights follows the opinion that only those who entered into Eretz Yisrael get a chelik in Eretz Yisrael. That's one possibility. Another one is both of them hold that the people entered Yisrael. So what do you mean? One of them said he got from the Zayda, but like kasha. If you're 20 years old, then you're yashin in your own right, and that's what the Brais is saying. If you were not 20 years old, you didn't yashin your own right. But what did you yashin? You yashin from your Zayda, right? What happens when you enter this row, whatever land you had goes back to the Zayda, then he passes it back down again. And the Chiddush is that we bypass the Meraglim and it goes down to the grandchildren. Just pause for 1 minute.